Welcome to the MURALI End. My name's Mark Machado, and I'm joined by my cousin across the pond in the USA, Dominic Machado. First things first, before we get on to any Asia Cup chat, please hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you're listening in a podcast format, hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. All those apps are built equally, so we don't mind if it's Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever it is. Thank you for listening. We exist to talk about Sri Lankan cricket, and there's been a lot going on in the last week, and there's a lot going to happen in the next week. Sri Lanka had the most dramatic game against India today, where kind of against all odds, they managed to bowl India out for what I thought was a kind of decent-ish and should have been a chaseable total of 213 runs. Sri Lanka fell short, though. They fell 41 runs short, 172 runs to get their kind of winning streak down to end their winning streak of 12. They did, however, keep bowling the team out, which meant that they've bowled out, I think, 14 teams on the bounce, which actually isn't something to sniff at. That's quite decent. But we're going to talk about what went right today and what went wrong today. Dominic, me and you recording this about four or so hours after the game ended. How are you feeling about the whole thing, and what's your kind of top takeaway from the way the game panned out today?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for having me as always. And I think getting over the excitement and the stress of that game has left me a little clear-headed. And I want to take some positives away because I think this was a positive performance. Coming into the match, a lot of people were saying, okay, they've won 13 on the bounce. They haven't played anybody. The best team they've played are, Bangladesh and Afghanistan. But they faced India at home with a second string bowling attack. We should highlight that for everyone. Four out of our top five bowlers are missing, and we bowled out India on a turning track. That was an exceptional performance, especially from the bowling side. And I think there were some players that showed a lot of character and heart today. I thought Charith coming in and bowling his quota of overs and taking 4 wickets. When I had seen him play sort of at younger levels, at under 19, even at the domestic level in Sri Lanka, he bowls quite a bit, but he hasn't taken that role on in the senior side very much. So to see him deliver a high quality spell against some very good left-handed batsmen, Ravi Jadeja and Aksar Patel are not, batsmen to scoff at. I thought that was exceptional. I thought he was building a really, really good innings. Played maybe a shot too much, but again, he stuck it out. He fought it out with Sadira there. And then the star of the show was your man, Dunith Wellalage. I won't go on too much about him because I want to leave that for you. But what a clutch player, and what, the quality of the wickets he took. These are not, getting out some lower order batsman on a qualifying team. We're talking about Shubman Gill. We're talking about Rohit Sharma. We're talking about Virat Kohli. We're talking about KL Rahul. This is the best of the best in world cricket. And I thought that was a tremendous performance from him. He bowled with heart. He was the best left arm spinner in that game, in a game that included Jadeja and Aksar Patel. And he batted with some real moxie. He showed some range in his shots. I think even compared to last year, I remember he came out against Australia a couple of matches and he played these little cameos, but it was clear he didn't quite have the power at the international level. That's starting to develop and that's starting to come in. And I think at this point, he is knocking on a spot for the 11. And you have to wonder, how do we keep him out of the 11 after performances like this and going from strength to strength throughout this tournament? So well done to Wellalage. Proud of how the team fought. There were a lot of times, again, where they looked down and out. India get up 80 for no loss. They strike back. There's that nice little partnership between Kishan and KL Rahul that threatened to take away the game. They strike back again. They lose early wickets. They build partnerships. Even Thakshana and Wellalage were able to put together a little partnership after DDS got out. So that fight, the never say die attitude, and that ability of every Sri Lankan team to make their opponents fight for every victory seems to be back. And I think that's where you see that confidence of winning 13 games in a row is they believe even when they're pressed by a good team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with a lot of what you mentioned there. I think the spirit, the fight, the constant fight as well. Because actually, when you go back to it, it didn't start well for SL when they started bowling. They were getting hit around a little bit. They found a way. They got back into it. The Sri way is to always find a way. It can be quite unorthodox today. Wellalage stepped up massively. I'll go into that in a bit. But I think we need to talk about Asalanka, right? Because we've kind of jokingly mentioned in passing that maybe they should give him a bowl every now and again who'd be good for the odd over here and there. We've seen Mahala when he would often, not often, he'd infrequently had a bowl, and I thought maybe that's the role that Trav Asalanka might take up. Obviously, there's some people in the commentary box who are quite impressed by the number of kind of spinning all rounders Shanka produced over the years. And I never really considered Asalanka to be part of that. I thought actually he's played a decent amount of international cricket. And I think he'd only bowled 2 or 3 times coming into this game. There was like, I just did not see him bowling 10 overs today. I didn't think, I thought the only way that would happen is if there was actual serious injuries in the field and they weren't able to complete their 50 overs without doing something quite strange. Not only does he bowl them, but he gets wickets as well. 4 wickets. It's actually quite incredible when you think about it, right? It's interesting. I thought that Deekshire and DDS weren't in the wickets, but they managed to keep the kind of run rate low. Um, I wonder if going into the game, Teacher in particular was the one player that India didn't want to give their wicket away to. I think tactically and in terms of maturity, I think India's batting is a lot further down the line than ours is, and we'll get on to that because there was some issue, clearly some issues with our batting. But the star of the show was Dennis Wellalage, right? I had in particular I've been talking about him for over a year now, I think, or around a year. I when Hasaranga got the injury and it was clear that he wasn't going to make the Asia Cup, my initial thought was, don't worry, this is a massive opportunity for Wellalage. You've got to take the opportunities when they come. At no point in his very young career, he's only 20 years old, has he ever been given an opportunity and not seized upon it. And today was just the best example of that of all time, right? I mean, I want a T-shirt with the names of the people who took the wickets off, right? Gill, Kohli, Sharma, KL, Hardik Pandya. What, unbelievable, right? That's the stuff dreams are made of. To be 20 years old, playing the first time you play India, to take those 5 wickets. They're 5 biggest names
Yeah.
when it comes to holding the bat, right?
Took the first ball
Incredible.
and last ball of the spell. Took wickets on the first ball. I like, how do you can't plan it better than that, you know?
Yeah, you can't. Just incredible. We talked about, in the last episode, I talked about how people, when you talk to people who've been close to him, who've worked with him, they talk about his mentality being just right and him being a fighter and him always finding a way. Today was the ultimate expression of that. I don't know if he listens or not, but I kind of hope he does because this is just, Dom, it's like me and you almost exist to pump his tires, right?
Yep.
There isn't a third Machado on this chat, but if it was, they're probably because Wellalage Machado, right?
Mark, I'll just pop in there for a second. My 6-year-old son was running around this morning chanting, much like the Premadasa crowd was. And there's this aura about him, this young kid with this 2-syllable name, well, more than 2-syllable, but you can chant his name, and he's just got this incredible knack for doing incredible things on the cricket field.
The other thing that's really interesting as well is normally when young players break into an international side, it's because they have one skill that they're incredibly good at. And Weller probably wouldn't be classically considered world class in any of the kind of skills, right? Potentially, if you're going to measure it, I don't know how you measure it. You might say actually his fielding is the thing he's closest at being truly world class at, but actually he's kind of just very good at everything.
Mm,
And on top of that, he's in a fight and scrap for everything, which kind of it's that multiplier which just makes him absolutely irresistible to kind of if you're picking a fantasy team for the World Cup. I don't even know if there's going to be a World Cup fantasy side. You just got to put him in it, right?
yeah.
Which also leads us to the next question, which is how do Sri Lanka get both him and Wanindu Hasaranga on the basis that Hasaranga is fit to get to the World Cup? How do you get both of them into an 11? Because they are kind of very similar players in terms of they're both potentially going to get you wickets or trouble the batter. Though, admittedly, possibly Hasaranga is a bit more, potentially buys his wickets a little bit more, and they can both bat. But I mean, if we can somehow get them in this team together, I think that could be a real handful for opposition batters at least.
Mm,
But I don't know how you do it, and I think, and I talked about this on social media earlier during the game. I think you might have to release someone from the top.
yeah. I So my answer to this question has to do with what Charith did today. So I was looking at his first class and list A stats as a bowler. And so he's actually taken 36 wickets as a list A bowler with an average of 23 and an economy of 4.35. So that's pretty decent. He's taken 30 wickets in first class cricket. He's also bowled that off spin in T20. Now you're not going to like where this is going to go, obviously. So, my answer to this is basically you're swapping DDS for Hasaranga because and I think DDS slots into that six role quite well because DDS Hasaranga slots into that six role quite well because I think he does have the power. I think that was one thing that was lacking a bit in the Sri Lankan innings today, and maybe we'll talk about that. Is at the beginning of the innings, Rohit had a bit of a go, and that was arguably the difference. They could score off of our fast bowling, we couldn't score off of theirs. So I think Hasaranga at 6 looks to me like something that I'd be interested in. I think that would add some firepower, which is needed in this lineup. I think the other change that I might make is I might drop Demuth for KJP. Looking forward, because to my mind, if we're looking at this team, they have the makings of a very good one-day side if they can add a little bit more pop to their batting. Just that chance of an explosive innings. Because we don't really have that. We don't have someone who is just going to go berserk for 25 balls, but that might be what takes us from 250 to 320. I think another interesting question is going to be, what are the pitches in India going to look like? If this is an Asian World Cup, like if this is an Asian pitch World Cup, I fancy us pretty highly. I think we're in one of the top 5 World Cup teams. I would say England, Australia, India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka would be the best bowling sides in those conditions. And I think they'd be able to compete against anybody on their day. And we just saw what they did with a second string bowling side. I think Wellalage needs to be in that side. I think that left arm is also really good because it's a big plus against right-handers. And you can tie down an end. And I think that's something that we're missing. We haven't had that slow left arm. We have a couple off spinners, but no slow left arm. That would add a little bit extra variety, allow us to bowl a bit more matchup based. Because actually we've seen both Bangladesh and India do that to us. When our right-handed batters are out, they just said, okay, we're going to bowl slow left arm over to you and see if you can get us away. So I think Wellalage has that role to play. Another option is horses for courses. So if it's going to be a flat 350 wicket, you might want to go with three seamers instead, right? Um, you might want to play the extra spinner. But my thought is that DDS is the one who makes way. I love him. I think he's a great cricketer. But I think if Charith really can bowl like he bowled today, you get a little bit more explosiveness and pop in your batting, and you get a little bit more variety in your bowling attack if you have DDS and Wellalage together.
I gonna say I think you drop Dimmoth, you move DDS to open with Patham. I think to me, he's been our most consistent performer across all three innings, all three formats for about 6 or 7 months now. I don't think you can drop DDS at this point. I think he's in the prime of his career, and I think you put Asalanka into his position, and you keep Wellalage where he is. That's again on the basis that it's a kind of more spin turning pitch. You could then also at that point you'd be able to play what 50 overs of spin if you needed it. What I was really impressed with today was chucking Charith the ball and letting him bowl 10 overs and seeing the way it was all going, and then him having success, then letting him bowl out was actually quite impressive as well in terms of captaincy. I thought Dustin's brave enough to make these decisions and to kind of move things around a little bit. I think we've talked in the last few weeks, maybe we have to look at Dustin's position, but actually, against Bangladesh on the weekend, he was essential in the role that he was able to play. And if, we have misread the pitch or, it's not taking slow bowling at all, it's not got anything for the slow bowlers, then he's going to have to bowl overs. And we know he's not afraid to do that if need be. And then we potentially, I think if we know if it's a pitch that's not going to do much for slow bowls, I think you might end up looking at dropping or resting Teachner and bringing in another seamer. But again, I mean, Teachner kind of goes under the radar sometimes, right? So it's it's good that we've got these problems because actually you go back 18 months ago and you're just like, where are our next lot coming from? And actually now we've got kind of selection of mates because you're right, KJP probably needs to be there. Madushka from Cricket Info, I was talking to him on Twitter and he was like, I think we should find a place for Vishka. And I can see the arguments for all these players, right? But I just don't know currently how, as it stands, who comes out and who comes in. I thought coming into the Asia Cup, I thought Sadira was the one in the batting whose place looked most easy to slot KJP into. Again, he's had such a good tournament. I just don't know how you drop him. I think though you're right. India was Sri Lanka's first really major test, their first big side that they played against in ODIs in quite a while, actually. And it highlighted the areas that we were good at, which is bowling. And actually, I'm going to say fielding as well, because I think our fielding is getting quite sharp. And it highlighted the areas where we need to improve. It's just the levels that we're at in terms with the bat. It's just nowhere near where we need to be if we're going to go and compete for the World Cup. There is a bit of time between now and the World Cup, and I'm in England and I've been following the ODI series with New Zealand, and England haven't got it exactly spot on, and teams are kind of still trying to figure out how to bat the full 50 overs and when to go and when not to go. Sri Lanka have done well in the past when they've been innovative. We talked about find a way, and I think they need to kind of find a way to get that batting to where it needs to be. And I think it might need a bit of tinkering. I think we've got within the setup, there are the players who can get us the correct scores that we need to get to and can bat as well as we need to get to. I think some of the top order batters today, I think Patham, Dimmoth and Kissel would have been disappointed with the way that the low scores that they got, and probably would be sitting in there, or hopefully they'll be asleep right now because it's quite late in the UK. And thinking about, if only I'd got six, if they've both all got 10 more runs each, potentially could have won it. It could have been a different game. And we'd be having a very different conversation. We've got Pakistan in a few days' time, Dom. Do you expect, and obviously I suppose a lot of this is pitch dependent, that they'll make some changes to the squad and try and rotate around a little bit, or do you think they'll keep the same or a similar-ish 11 depending on the pitch?
Yeah, Mark, before we get on to Pakistan, I wanted to kind of think about that innovation question that you posed. And I'm stealing from you here, but what about opening with Wanindu? We've seen Bangladesh do this with Mehdi Hassan Miraz, right? If there's quality fast bowling, why not shield a little bit some of the batters to come later and let Wanindu have a free hit, basically? Let him come up the order.
So I'll tell you why I've suddenly got, now that it's actually kind of come into focus and it's something that could actually happen. The thing that worries me is, and full disclosure, I love Asalanka, right? I love him to bits. I've never talked to him. I've never seen him in nets. I've never spent any time with him. So maybe I could be totally wrong. I'm a little bit nervous about how he might play the new ball. And not just that, but also that there's a lot of stats to suggest that actually Pathum Kusal, DDS, and if you play in Dimmoth, would all, if you're going to play them, they need to play higher up the order. I'm not saying he couldn't do a role there. And I wonder if, kind of, I know, I assume I was the first person who started saying it because I started saying it about a year ago. But I wonder if actually, is that innovative or is that just trying to recreate the Sanith trick, right? Is it just trying to do the old Jayasuriya and have him come and open at the top? I mean,
well, I guess I think the thing that's different for me, there's two things that are different, is that as good as Sanath was as a bowler, it's not taking a frontline bowler and putting him up the order. And I think it's more than sort of a Sunil Narayan situation, right, in the IPL where they started opening with him and said, okay, just bash everyone around. I do think that Hasaranga is a proper bat. The other aspect of it, and you said the new ball, yes, the new ball swings and seams, but if you can get the ball aerial, there's only two fielders out there. So can he bash the ball around a little bit? And just a quick 40, a quick 50 can make a difference, right? And it already puts the opposition on the back foot, right? It's not, okay, we've got two slips waiting, right? And we're going to take it slow, but we know we're going to bring the attack to them. Because I think that might be the problem, is we've gotten a little bit predictable in our batting. We know, okay, Pathum and Dimmoth are going to give us a solid start. We have plenty of guys who can drop anchor. I think Kusal has been batting well this tournament. So far, he played a really good innings against Bangladesh. Sadira has been excellent. So part of me wonders whether you're opening up more possibilities if that happens. I also don't disagree with the DDS to open thing, because I do think statistically he's much better in the top order. And again, I wonder if maybe
I think today was a good example of why you want to actually make DDS bat slightly higher up, right? Yeah. Because I think he kind of if you're going to consider the Sri batting a chase, basically the chase starts from the moment DDS gets in, and actually that's slightly unfair. Maybe it starts just before, right? But the chase effectively is over when he gets out, right? Yeah. And I think Hasaranga's batting, or his perception of his batting, suffered a little bit from having to bat too low down, and coming in too late to really make a difference, other than to try and smack the ball around, right? It's clear to me Hasaranga's worked on it quite a bit, but I still think DDS is a better option to kind of higher up, because he's just a classy batter. He's going to take opportunities.
He's one of the best. at handling pace, right? That's the other bit, right? And maybe you tell DDS that too. You say, go around, whack it around a bit, be aggressive, because if when he comes in at 6, it's a bit of a waste, right? Because he can't play out in innings in the same way unless they're in a total crap situation, right? Maybe you give him that same brief. The other thing I worry about slightly is then we have right-handers at the top 4 positions in our lineup. And if you have the top, that opens you up to, some sort of tandem bowling, left hand, right hand combination just makes it a little bit more difficult there.
Yeah, but I think today and potentially against Afghanistan as well, actually, the openers are either getting out cheap and therefore you've lost your kind of 3 wickets in the power play, or you're in a situation where they bat to kind of 18, 19, 20, 22 overs, but are just kind of getting around the 100 mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's you're in a situation where then they've neither set you up for the game or they've put you in a position where you've lost some wickets. And actually, if it kind of needed to be done going into the qualifiers because we had to get out the qualifiers, and we knew that the bowling attacks in the qualifiers were not going to be good enough by and large to probably skittle us all out. But we needed to bat, and we needed to bat all 50 overs, and we needed to get big totals to just guarantee that we won those games. But now we've got to play kind of chess almost against the other teams and be like, right, we don't have the big hitters that the other teams do. We don't have the ability to necessarily accelerate all the way through 50 overs, but what we do have is potentially the ability to accelerate for the first 10, use the power play to its maximum, or at least create a lineup where if we lose two wickets or 3 wickets in the power play, we are not panicked. And then we can kind of build for the next kind of 20 overs, and then we can get to kind of 30, assess where we are, and then decide what we want to do from that point. I think that's the way. If you look for, if we talked about, we've got to find a way. That is the way to figure it out, right? Because once the game starts, it's it's not like you're in a cocoon. There is people around you. There's coaches, analysts, teammates, squad members. There's social media. They can just
That's why I think KJP, right? That's why I kind of am like, okay, you can take advantage of the first 10 overs that way. The other thing, and Mark, I'm curious your opinion, is do you think they could do with switching the order of Sadira and Mendes?
Again, though, isn't there this whole thing about Mendes has to bat higher up? That's when he makes the most runs higher up. I kind of understand where you're coming from, though, right? Because actually, I think with Kussel, a lot of it is don't get him facing the bowlers. We know that he's going to try and hit.
Yeah.
If you want to preserve his wicket.
Yeah. And I think T20 he does well because he has a license to full go. Right? And we saw this today, right? So he's been it's clear that he's gotten a brief start your innings slowly, and then today they said, okay, try to get a few boundaries and score a quick 30 or 40 and knock some runs off of it, because he went for some shots he hasn't been going for. And I think for me, where he really excels is he does very well against spin. I mean, we saw what he did against Rashid Khan. He was very good against the Bangladeshi spinners. I think having him come in at 4 also allows him to be a bit more aggressive when you're facing against, when you're facing spin bowlers, and especially against leg spin. He is fantastic against leg spin. So you have someone, and maybe this is just a sign that we need to be a little bit more flexible, right? So maybe the first wicket falls, we send out DDS, right? Is that something that you entertain? I think there are ways to make this team go, but I don't know that we're pushing all the buttons.
100%, definitely. That's actually, I was just thinking, I think we just need to be more flexible, right? We need to read the pitch, we need to look at the situation. We need to, so when they lost the kind of 2 wickets early, they basically should have just, I don't know, obviously I don't know what the messaging was, but I think the messaging should have been, just bat for the next 15 overs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I think to a degree that kind of was the messaging, and actually what really
Yeah.
kind of undone us is they hadn't faced such smart bowling and such variety of bowling attacks, or off bowling like the attack that India have. And actually, when I was watching it, I was like, India's attack is, our attack's pretty. It's it's a difficult attack to play against, I think, because you've got mystery spinners, you've got finger
Yeah.
spinners, wrist spinners, all types of different spin, and then you've got all types of different seam, right? So almost every point of release that the human body can possibly create in a cricket pitch, Sri Lanka have got a bowler for it. And to be honest, India are pretty much the same,
Yeah.
but actually all their players are a lot more experienced and a lot more further down the line.
They're at you constantly. There's no relent.
Yeah.
Bumrah was so good. He didn't get anything off the pitch, and then he started bowling these slower balls. That wicket he got of Mendes was just brilliant bowling.
As a by the by, this could be Bumrah's World Cup, right?
Yeah.
If he managed to stay fit and all through the tournament, this could be his defining
Yeah.
moment as a international cricketer, right?
Yeah. And Mark, I think what we're touching on here is we need to use the flexibility we have and that we've built up actually over the past couple of years to our fullest advantage, right? We could employ any of those strategies that we just talked about. What does it look like when we say, okay, you know what? You're not expecting this. Hasaranga is going to come out and open, right? And forcing the other team to adjust to our plans. And one thing I'll add about the Indian bowling lineup, one, they looked stellar. They looked so good. I mean, there's so much talent there. When Hardik Pandya is your sixth bowler and your fourth and fifth bowler are Ravi Jadeja and Aksar Patel, like, can't beat that. But at the end of the day, I actually thought the Sri Lankan batsman played spin better than the Indian batsman did. And because we lost 3 wickets to seam, and actually four. We lost 4 wickets to seam and 6 wickets to spin, and they lost all 10 to spin. So I actually think we handled the spin attack better. And Kuldeep took those last 2 wickets of 10 and 11, but I thought overall we handled the spin better, but we just didn't have that answer up top against India's fast bowling.
I wonder if that's because the Indian batters hadn't seen Wellalage and Asalanka as much as Sri Lanka have seen some of the Indian spinners, and there's a bit of mystery around it. In fact, I remember while the match was going on, I was like, I didn't realize Asalanka was this good.
Yeah.
Why have we unveiled this weapon now? Why didn't we save this for like the first dry turning pitch at the World Cup and unleashed him there? But it's done now. And the only one thing, the one thing I need to add about Wellalage is I really, 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 really hope he gets picked up by the IPL now. Because it's been such a game changer for Tichenor and Pathirana in particular. That you think he's still so young, he could be really molded and shaped into a really top class professional cricketer.
At that age.
Been backed by a team in the IPL for a few seasons, right?
So
Dom, should we look ahead to Pakistan?
Yeah, I was going to say, should we go back to your question that I then sort of threw by the wayside with the Hasaranga to open thing? But let's look at Pakistan. So it's a win and in. If we win, we're in the final.
It's a semi-final, right? It's a semi-final, right? But what do we do? Do we stick with the same 11? Obviously, we don't know what the pitch is going to do. Do we change it up? Do we give the players who you sound, Dom, like you'd like to see KJP get a shot on the team,
right? And I think this is a good trial run, right? Because we don't have the problem of how do we work Hasaranga and Wellalage and DDS into the same team. So because you can do a like for like of KJP for Demuth. Because the last 5-6 innings, Demuth hasn't put up anything of substance. As you said, neither taking us far enough along in the innings nor not getting out cheaply, right? And I was thinking today, I was like, if there's a match where Demut's test temperament is going to be helpful, it's going to be this first 10 over burst from Siraj and Bumrah, right? But he looked really uncomfortable, and I think maybe we should bring KJP in. He's been batting in the nets. Might as well take a shot, right? It's a semifinal. This is the chance to take a risk. We can't use the excuse of we've won 13 games in a row anymore. So I think that change would provide some positive intent, maybe up the tempo of the innings. I'm curious about this for you, Mark. Do you feel like when there's an aggressive batter at the crease, it naturally increases the aggression of his partner?
You see, I think that depends on the partner, right? Because sometimes that does happen. Sometimes it can kind of rub off. Because I think sometimes instead of increasing the aggression of the partner, the bowlers could get more kind of conservative in the way they're bowling, or actually fall apart altogether. We see that happening. You see that happen loads, and then suddenly the person at the other side, the other batter goes, "Oh, actually, I can start to see the gaps appear," or they're bowling me absolute pies. I'm going to smack them around as well. I think though, I've obviously over the years, like yourself, I've watched a lot of Dimmoth. He isn't one of those people who, I'm not sure he doesn't take the opportunity to score runs when they come, except sometimes, particularly early on in an innings, the opportunities have to really make themselves known for him to take them, right? Today, I suppose, was another great example where it kind of felt like he could have stuck about till over 15, 16, 17 and still kind of wouldn't have looked comfortable, and maybe might have only scored an extra 5 or 6 runs. It's sometimes watching him back can be kind of beautiful and also kind of weird.
Yeah. Because he looks so good when you give him the ball on his legs or the drive ball. But I wonder if the range just isn't there. I don't think I've seen him play really a pull shot or a hook shot since he's opened the batting. And I think I would like to see KJP in. I also think Pakistan, yes, they played better cricket than us generally over the last couple years, but I wonder if they're in some ways a mirror to us. They have this extremely talented squad, a great bowling lineup that's stocked to the gills in fast bowling as opposed to spin bowling, but they have their batting might be more steady, but they also might be less aggressive than we are. Because they really struggled against India 2 nights ago.
I feel like I watched quite a bit of them, and I think their batting's a lot more mature than ours.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes they get stuck in the mud like they did against India, but actually in Barber is one, Iftikhar, they've got players who can really score and can score at pace. They got to the World Cup final, the T20 World Cup final last year. That wasn't by accident. They could have won that game as well, actually. Certain key moments, or Shaheen didn't get injured, the back end of it.
Maybe I'm colored by what happened in the Asia Cup, where we were just the more aggressive team, and that's why we won. It's obviously harder to be aggressive in 50 over.
I think the other thing about Pakistan is the one thing they do have in common with us is that they are so inconsistent, right? Or it appears in big games they've been inconsistent. Like coming into the Asia Cup, they're ranked number one. They go and lose to India, and they just aren't able to find a kind of performance 2 days ago, 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago when you're listening to this. So that's where I think Sri Lanka are. For me, Sri Lanka aren't going to wake up and become England. They aren't going to become India. The next step is to become a Pakistan, right? So become a team that people don't just feel your bowlers, they feel your batters, and that each batter is capable on their day to put on a really solid performance.
Absolutely.
Where I'm not sure that there's many people around the world who really look at the Sri Lanka batting lineup and really fit. I mean, me and you are really stabbing in the dark when we talk about it, right? We're like, Mate, Asalanka open. That might be the innovation that gets us over the
Yeah.
line, right? Where really, if you're a shrunken batsman, you should be trying to put in just consistent performances, right? To get your average up every game that you're playing. Um,
Yeah.
and that's where we're kind of the level that we're kind of at with our batting at the moment. Where I think Pakistan are a little bit
Yeah.
further down the line of the journey, right? So I think it's a good test, right? I actually, I came away from the game today and I was buoyed by it because the one thing we've seen the last few years is the Sri Lanka actually appear to be learning from every
Yes.
loss, right? And I think they will take a lot from today because it wasn't it wasn't a disastrous loss. It will feel bad
Yeah.
in a way but maybe what they should reflect on is, do you remember that ODI against India where they were all out for, I can't remember, like 34, 35.
Yeah.
My therapist knows, but I've fully forgotten that game now. Um, I was actually in Sri Lanka at the time and it was terrible.
Yeah.
Um, and in what, 7 months, 8 months, they've come this far to
Yeah.
get within 41 runs.
Yeah.
Add those two scores together, they're still short, but
Yeah.
uh,
It wasn't close
it's
when they played last time.
yeah. And today was close,
Yeah.
right? They found a way to get close to it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what they should be thinking. And now they should look at the Pakistan team and go, right, people around the world talk about, there's about 4 or 5 batsmen in this team that people talk about. How do I become one of those?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
Um,
we're seeing the metal tested right now. This is the the crucible for Sri Lanka, right? These next 3 months, the World Cup is going to be a crucible where these batters either grow into people who can take Sri Lanka to the next level, or we're going to have to see some wholesale changes.
yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see where those wholesale changes come, and who gets put kicked to the wayside, as it were. If and when that needs to happen. We talked about this 3 month period. We're 2 weeks into that 3 months. I think, Dom, in kind of conclusion, is that me and you, who've been having these long conversations once a week, if you don't already subscribe, if you've got this far in, please definitely do subscribe. Um, I think me and you are kind of excited about the whole how it seems to be going thus far,
Yeah.
and I think we're definitely going to stick with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of, there we're building. We're building.
It's slowly, 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 in its own unique Sri Lankan way, coming together. Um, and people are starting to ask the question if we can win the World Cup.
Yeah. And that's the
Um,
glory of it. We can't predict in its own Sri Lankan way how it's going to come together.
quite right. So, should we leave it there? We'll be back next week, then,
Perfect.
right?
Yes.
So yeah, of course, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell all the other Sri Lankans you know. I need to end this recording. You've been listening to MURALI End, and the reason I need to end it is because I need to ask Dom how the local Sri Lankan meetup was in his part of North America. See you all later. Thanks for listening. Good night.